First witness is Miss Viola Fletcher, also known, if I can, Mother Fletcher. Thank you. I don't have a mother, so thank you. Mother Fletcher is the oldest living survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. She was 7 years old when she lived through the massacre. Mother Fletcher, you are now recognized to testify. Is the microphone on?
Yes. My name is that. Okay. My name is Viola Ford Fletcher. I'm the daughter of Lucinda Ellis and John Wesley Ford of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm the sister of Hughes Van Ellis, who's also here today. I'm a survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. 2 weeks ago, I celebrated my 107th birthday. Today, I'm visiting Washington, D.C. for the first time in my life. I'm here seeking justice, and I'm asking my country to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa in 1921. On May 31st in 21, I went to bed in my family's home in Greenwood, neighbors of Tulsa. The neighborhood I felt asleep in that night was rich, not just in terms of wealth, but in culture, community, heritage, and my family had a beautiful home. We had great neighbors, and I had friends to play with. I felt safe. I had everything a child could need. I had a bright future ahead of me. Greenwood could, excuse me, yeah. Still, Greenwood should have given me the chance to truly make it in this country. Then a few hours, all of that was
Also known, if I can, Mother Fletcher. Mother Fletcher. Thank you. Thank you. I don't have a mother, so thank you. Thank you. Mother Fletcher is the oldest living survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. She was 7 years old when she lived through the massacre. Mother Fletcher, you are now recognized to testify. Is the microphone on?
yes. My name is that okay. My name is Viola Ford Fletcher. I'm the daughter of Lucinda Ellis and John Wesley Ford of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm the sister of Hughes Van Ellis, who's also here today. I'm a survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. 2 weeks ago, I celebrated my 107th birthday. Today, I'm visiting Washington, D.C. for the first time in my life. I'm here seeking justice, and I'm asking my country to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa in 1921. On May 31st in 21, I went to bed in my family's home in Greenwood, neighbors of Tulsa. The neighborhood I felt asleep in that night was rich, not just in terms of wealth, but in culture, community, heritage, and my family had a beautiful home. We had great neighbors, and I had friends to play with. I felt safe. I had everything a child could need. I had a bright future ahead of me. Greenwood could, excuse me, yeah. Still, Greenwood should have given me the chance to truly make it in this country. Within a few hours, all of that was gone. The night of the massacre, I was awakened by my family. My
My
parents and
parents
five
and five
siblings were
siblings were
there.
there.
I was
I was
told we
told
had to
we had to
leave, and
leave,
that
and
was
that
it.
was it.
I will
I
never
will never
forget the
forget the
violence of the
violence of
white
the white
mob
mob
when we
when
left
we
our
left our
home.
home.
I
I
still see
still
black
see
men
black men
sin being
being
shot,
shot,
black
black
bodies lying
bodies
in the
lying in the
street.
street.
I
I
still smell
still smell
smoke and
smoke
see
and see
fire.
fire.
I
I
still
still
see
see
black
black
businesses being
businesses being
burned.
burned.
I still
I
hear
still hear
airplanes flying
airplanes flying
overhead.
overhead.
I hear
I
the
hear the
screams.
screams.
I have
I have
lived through the
lived through the
massacre every
massacre every
day.
day.
Our country
Our
may
country may
forget this
forget this
history, but I
history, but I
cannot.
cannot.
I will
I
not.
will not.
And other
And other
survivors do
survivors
not.
do not.
And our
And our
descendants do
descendants
not.
do not.
When my
When
family
my
was
family
forced
was
to leave
forced to leave
Tulsa, I
Tulsa, I
lost my
lost my
chance of an
chance of an
education.
education.
I never
I never
finished school
finished
past
school
the
past
fourth
the fourth
grade.
grade.
I have
I
never
have
made
never
much
made
money
much
in my
money in my
country.
country.
State
State
and
and
city
city
took a
took
lot
a
from
lot
me.
from me.
Despite
Despite
this,
this,
I spent
I
time
spent time
supporting
supporting
the war
the war
effort
effort
in the
in the
shipyards
shipyards
of
of
California.
California.
But most
But
of my
most of my
life, I
life,
was
I
a
was a
domestic
domestic
worker
worker
serving white
serving white
families.
families.
I never
I
made
never
much
made much
money,
money,
but
but
to this
to this
day, I can
day, I
barely
can barely
afford
afford
my
my
everyday
everyday
needs.
needs.
All the
All
while,
the
the
while,
city
the
of
city of
this
this
Tulsa have
Tulsa has
unjustly
unjustly
used the
used the
names and
names and
stories of
stories of
victims
victims
like
like
me
me
to
to
enrich
enrich
myself and
myself
its
and
white
its white
allies through
allies
the
through the
30s
30s
million,
million
through the
through
30s
the 30s
million
million
raised
raised
by the
by the
Tulsa
Tulsa
Centennial
Centennial
Commissioner
Commissioner
while I was
while I was
continuing to live
continuing
in
to live in
poverty.
poverty.
I am a
I am a
107-year
107-year
old and have
old and
never
have never
been
been
seen
seen
justice.
justice.
I pray
I
that
pray
one
that
day
one
I
day I
will.
will.
I have
I
been
have been
blessed
blessed
with a long
with a
life
long life
and have
and
seen the
have seen
best
the
and the
best
worst
and the
of this
worst of this
country.
country.
I think
I
about
think
the
about the
terror,
terror,
horror
horror
inflicted
inflicted
upon black
upon black
people in this
people in
country
this
every
country
day.
every day.
This
This
continued
continued
MIDI has
MIDI
the
has the
power to
power
lead
to
us
lead
down
us
a better
down a better
path.
path.
I'm
I'm
asking that my
asking that my
country
country
acknowledge what
acknowledge
has
what
been
has been
happened to
happened to
me,
me,
the
the
traumas and
traumas and the
the
loss,
and I
and
ask
I ask
survivors and
survivors and
descendants to
descendants
be given
to
the
be
chance
given a
to
chance to
speak,
speak,
seek
seek
justice,
justice,
open the
open the
door.
door.
All of you
All of
know
you
how
know how
easy it is
easy it
to
is to
deny
deny
that a
that a
violence
violence
mob
mob
threatened your
threatened your
lives
lives
and took
and
your
took your
property.
property.
For
For
70
70
years, the
years,
city
the
of
city of
Tulsa and its
Tulsa and
chamber
its chamber
chambers told
chambers
us
told
that
us that
the
the
massacre didn't
massacre didn't
happen,
happen,
like we
like we
didn't see
didn't
it
see it
with our
with
own
our own
eyes.
eyes.
You
You have
have me
have
here
me
right
here
now.
right now.
You see
You
Mother
see Mother
Randall, you
Randall,
see
you
my
see my
brother
brother
Hughes Van
Hughes Van
Ellis.
Ellis.
We live
We
this
live this
history
history
and we
and
can't
we can't
ignore it.
ignore it.
it
it
it's our
it's our
lives with
lives with
us.
us.
Oh my
Oh my
goodness.
goodness.
We lost
We lost
everything that
everything
day,
that
our
day. Our
homes,
homes, our churches, our
our
newspapers, our
theaters,
theaters,
our
our
lives.
lives.
Greenwood
Greenwood
represented all the
represented all the
best of
best of
what was
what was
possible for
possible
Black
for
people
Black
in
people in
America and
America and
for all the
for all the
people.
people.
No one
No
cared
one
about
cared
us
about
for
us for
almost
almost
100
100
years.
years.
We and
We
our
and our
history
history
have been
have been
forgotten,
forgotten,
washed
washed
away.
away.
This
This
Congress must
Congress must
recognize
recognize
us
us
and our
and our
history
history
for Black
for Black
America,
America,
for the white
for the white
Americans, and
Americans,
for
and
all
for all
Americans.
Americans.
With
With
That's some
that some
justice.
justice.
Yes, was
Yes,
that it?
is that it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought it
I
was
thought it
another
was another
page.
page.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to say?
No.
No, it's not.
Thank you very much. We appreciate very much your testimony.
Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the central. Good evening on the East Coast. I just had to open up with the incredible Viola Fletcher Welcome to the live, one and all. Thank you so much for joining. I just have some comments about what took place with Biden's visit to Tulsa. And I wanted to start it with that footage of Miss Fletcher testifying before Congress on the 100th commemoration of the Tulsa race massacre that we all know by now, well, we should know, was whitewashed, as is most of our history, most of our contribution to this country, most of why we are the anchor of this country's capitalism. White folks have lied ferociously to blame it on everything but the atrocity, the oppression, the institutional systemic racism that has been the reign of terror of white inferiors who, oh, by the way, were extremely jealous. They can look in their backyards, the KKK, and see how prosperous the blacks, the American descendants of chattel slavery, were doing in Greenwood. They pulled themselves up by their bootless straps to create Wakanda right in Greenwood. You know, this isn't made for movies. This actually happened. So they want to continue in their benign neglect of the very people whose ancestors built this country with their lives. And so I wanted to open with the testimony of Miss Viola Fletcher before Congress, because it's a shame how they had 4 million black millionaires and many within the community on the horizon to become millionaires before the white inferior glacier donkeys, okay, the domestic terrorists who still have yet to be labeled that to this day, came through with the help of the National Guard and bombed 36 blocks of Greenwood. Our people perished. They claim it was 300, but I don't know how you only assassinate, 300 people when you have clearly bombed 36 blocks in Tulsa. How does that work with 10,000 people? 6,000 left in the internment camps. Everybody, 4,000 got away. 4,000 ran from, airplanes dropping bombs, air raids, and the civilians who were allowed to come through there with their guns while they arrested our ADOX men, put them in jail and took their guns. You see how dirty they play. And so to me, it's quite offensive when you've got numbers like what I'm about to show you in 2009, and Biden shows up without an executive order of these Republicans, which is Oklahoma. He don't show up with an executive order. He shows up like they all do, knowing how to recite the massacre verbatim. Can tell you what it's done and the impact it has on us today, while not offering any reparations. Miss Viola Fletcher is 104 years old. Never had any money, never finished school beyond the 4th grade, because at 7, she had a Holocaust hit her in Tulsa, akin to about 25 of the Holocaust, other massacres throughout the country, where black folks had pulled themselves up by their bootless straps, and the white inferior glacier donkeys decided to destroy and decimate it. And so I want to show you why I'm so insulted. Yes, hi Kelly. I am so over Sheila Jackson Lee. The same atrocities have happened in her district, and she has yet to do anything about it or HR 40, but will go to Tulsa for some damn photo ops with Miss Fletcher. That's what they all do, Kelly. That's what they all do. That's what it was for Biden. They're pandering for the vote while doing nothing for ADOCs and doing everything for immigrants who wouldn't be here but for our heinous chattel slave labor. The immigrants and whites alike eat from that table. I'm going to show you some harrowing numbers right now where the Hispanics are actually doing better and we're more educated in Tulsa. Let's look at it. Let's look at the numbers. I'm about that data. You should be too. Hold on. It's unconscionable that they show up and think it's okay to do nothing. Let's talk about it. So this is 2009. What you're looking at, let me make sure you can see it. Hold on. This is a 2009 racial wealth gap working draft PowerPoint. In 2009, now we're not talking numbers today on the heels of a pandemic that our reparations has been used to make mostly the oligarchs wealthy, while many of our people have now been evicted and are staying in extended stay hotels where it costs substantially more than it does to rent, but they don't have the credit score to be credit worthy or deserving of an apartment. Highest rates of unemployment and underemployment, and Biden shows up reciting the history verbatim and its impact while not doing anything after 100 years to make an executive order of some sort to insist on reparations for Tulsa. We're just supposed to wait for what? The Republicans to wake up and have a clue and do what is right after 100 years? But you can give Asians protections and you can give AAPI $80.5 million. They offered the Tulsa survivors $100,000 apiece. In today's dollars, I don't even know what the devastation of 36 city blocks of schools, theater, churches, retail outlets, grocery stores, hospitals. I don't even know what that would be worth in today's dollars. But to offer these survivors of a Holocaust, you inserted onto them. You brought that. And now your median net worth in 2009 is $113,149. To Hispanics, $6,325. To African American or ADOCs, $5,677. This is 2009. What is it since the pandemic? If this was 2009, these are the questions you've got to ask yourself, family. These are the questions you have to ask yourself. And so Sheila Jackson Lee can show up for a photo op, dancing a jig and shit, while sitting up here trying to push a cashless reparations on the American descendants of chattel slavery. Biden can show up and recite the history. Let's talk about it. Biden speaks to fill the silence about Tulsa race massacre. President Biden on Tuesday commemorated the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa race massacre, becoming the first president to honor the victims in Tulsa of the two-day rampage by a white mob. Keep your apologies. Pay them the reparations. Miss Viola Fletcher and her posse have been waiting for 100 years to be repaired properly. Keep your apology. For much too long, the history of what took place here was told in silence, cloaked in darkness. Mr. Biden told the audience in his speech. But just because history is silent, it doesn't mean that it did not take place. And while darkness can hide much, it erases nothing. It erases nothing. Some injustices are so heinous, so horrific, so grievous, they can't be buried, no matter how hard people try. The president noted the value of each Black life lost in 1921, and retold the violent injustice of that day in graphic detail. That loss of life and property that still reverberates today, he said. Hell was unleashed. Literal hell was unleashed, the president said, as he described how the mob terrorized Greenwood. An estimated 300 Black Tulsa residents were killed in the massacre when white mob destroyed more than 30 square blocks of homes and businesses in the Greenwood district. It was 36, also known at the time as Black Wall Street. So was everybody else on vacation? You're telling me that 4,700 people survived the air raids because I saw reports that you had 6,000 in internment camps. What these white inferior glacier donkeys did was make the riot our fault for coming to the defense of a gentleman whose name fails me right now, who was wrongfully accused of touching on a white woman after what we believe he stumbled in the elevator and ripped her dress. So the brothers went down as an armed militia to get him away from those white mobs, from executing, from lynching him the way they had intended. And so the way they retold all of these events was to make it appear, you know how they do corporate news media with 3 Ks? From early on, they made Tulsa Black folks' fault because a shot was fired when they went down there to help the brother to survive. And all mayhem and hell broke loose because that's what they were looking to do in the first place. You remember when you were in the school playground and someone would place a brick or something up, a little rock or something up top your shoulder in order for the other person to flip it off so the fight could ensue. That's what these white inferior glacier donkeys did and made it our fault to justify why they refused to pay reparations. That's what's been going on all this time. So no, it was more than 300 Black Tulsans because I don't know of 4,700 Black Tulsan residents who were able to get away. Maybe they were luxuriating somewhere in Europe. And it was 36 blocks, not 30. Roughly 300 Black-owned businesses were destroyed, and Black homeowners and business owners received no aid from the local government. Their insurance claims were also denied. And they were arrested, and their guns were taken from them. While the National Guard and the race soldier civilians were able to have their way, terrorizing and ravaging an entire community. One of the wealthiest of its day. But local officials only reported 36 deaths at the time. Mr. Biden described the vast discrepancies between the official death toll and the real casualties. And those numbers are a lie. Unless you can show me 4,700 of those 10,000 people that got away, you're lying that only 300 were decimated. At the moment, the process of exhuming the unmarked graves has begun. So that's what they did. They just lumped them into mass graves. So how do you ever get a real count, even once you exhume? Mr. Biden said, pausing for a moment of silence. My fellow Americans, this was not a riot. This was a massacre, he said. For a long time, schools in Tulsa, let alone schools elsewhere, did not teach about the Tulsa race massacre, the president noted. But this wasn't the only racial assault in U.S. history, he said. The United States needs to continue to come to terms with its past. All the while, you've got the Republicans wanting to defund the public schools that teach critical race theory, to tell the truth. Quote, I've come here to help fill the silence, but not restore, not repair. Because in silence, wounds deepen, he said, and only as painful as it is, only in remembrance do wounds heal. We just have to choose to remember. Like I said, keep your apologies and give my people the money they are long overdue. If you could do it for the Asian American Pacific Islanders, you could do it for the American descendants of chattel slavery who has suffered like a Tulsa all throughout the country. She shared with you in her testimony how losing the value of Greenwood left her working as a domestic, making very little money, having only completed her education through the 4th grade. Damn a $100,000, return that with an ROI worthy of the people. So Tulsa's just one of our Black Wall Streets that were decimated. Out of sheer jealousy that we had it going on, as they sit up here and spread the lie that we're lazy and won't pull ourselves up by our bootless straps and won't do for self. With what? And you've got Black immigrants talking about this nonsense. Let's look up Jonathan Capehart. That's one I meant to tell you about. Hold on. He says no reparations check of any amount could substitute for an apology. Now, if you follow the reparationist perspective, you would understand that these Mickey Fickies already apologized secretly under Obama back in 2009, August 28, 2009. This Mickey Fickie gonna sit up here and write this on August 15, 2019. That apology would be sufficient over cash repair. In the trillions over multi-generations, the Mayor's Consortium says we're owed 6.2 quadrillion. That's 151 million per ADOX. But this Mickey Fickie sits up here, as a coon he is, and these are the people they give position to. The ones that want to help them continue in their benign neglect of the very people who continuously deliver them the White House. Not me. A trifecta of either party gets us George Floyd 9 minutes, 29 seconds to the neck. I am for what Dr. Charles Morris, pastor of Abyssinian Church, prescribed after delivering Teddy Roosevelt the White House. He dishonorably discharged 167 Buffalo soldiers who were wrongfully accused of murdering a second white man after being quarantined in their barracks for being wrongfully accused of murdering the first. Dr. Charles Morris says you shot us when our guns were empty, and for that we're going to return the same by delivering a blue top of the ticket and a red Congress to protect the Black South. I am imploring upon us to move as a block, to put red at the top and a blue Congress to protect the over 53% of ADOX who rely on government assistance by design, of institutional systemic racism until they cut the checks in the trillions over multi-generations. So let me go back because I don't have long with you. I'm not going to come back with a second show. I am tired after 4 hours of our very first commission meeting on AB 3121 to get reparations for Californians. Preferably we can get that done before we're totally extinct out here. We've gone from 16 to 5%, less than 5% since COVID. Folks are fleeing here because you can't even get a job interview in California unless you are bilingual. While they tell us no to quotas, they build policies to make it so you can't even get a job interview unless you speak Spanish. And even if you show up speaking it as fluently as Pedro, you don't have the complexion for protection for hire. So they're not hiring us. So we're fleeing here in the droves, or winding up homeless, sleeping in our cars, living in extended stays, or living in Venice Beach where the white folks are pissed that a tiny percent of the homeless problem has come to reside on the beach in these little tiny houses or whatever they're building over there. They mad because now it's in their backyard. As long as it's in our communities, they don't give a damn. But they don't want to look at what they've helped to create. So I'm going to go back to the text I was reading from. I just want you to know about this Jonathan K. part. These are the people that they're going to be putting in position over us. The younger versions of the Coon Clyburns. And this is why Barack Obama made it even more difficult for us to get reparations with his no to reparations. He has left us an uphill battle. We'll take our victories as we can get them, you see. We'll take our victories as we can get them. But it's going to be a long haul to get it on a federal level because of Barack Obama and his no to our reparations while creating 1 million white millionaires during his tenure, while ADOCs, over 50% of us, not over 50%, 53% of us lost the only wealth we had, our homes. Back to the text. I've come here to feel, wait, let me back up. But this wasn't the only racial assault in U.S. history, he said. The United States needs to continue to come to terms with its past. I've come to help fill the silence because as silence wounds deeper, we have to choose to remember. The president also spoke to the threat posed by white supremacy. We must not give hate a safe harbor, he said. As I said in my address to the joint session of Congress, according to the intelligence community, terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, white supremacy. So why haven't you passed an executive order labeling them a domestic terrorist group? Why haven't you done something federally to guarantee they can't get employment in the police department? You see, they can spill out the pretty words and pander for your vote while doing nothing to give us protections while protecting Asians who, of their assault, 68% are verbal, and giving them $80.5 million. You show up without your checkbook. I know you can't literally write the checks, but you can put pressure on Congress instead of running from the question about reparations. It's easy to be in support in a lukewarm way over a cashless reparations study called HR 40. That's easy. I'm sick of the Democrats and the Republicans alike making all these immigrants a priority over us. As you see in the example on the screen, why in the world do we build all the wealth and we're doing worse than Hispanics? In terms of median income and wealth, we're more educated. Let me go to that real quick. Let me go and show you how we're more educated than the white folks. Keep those figures in mind while I scroll through. Keep those figures in mind. Let's look at it. I like the data, because other folks is talking out the side of their neck, acting like we have damn arrived. Here we go. Now you saw Hispanics' net worth, median net worth, is greater than ours by about $1,000. 42.8% of them are high school GED or no high school diploma. Let's look at us. 15.1% of us don't have a high school diploma. 34% of us are high school degree, has a high school diploma. 34% of us have some college or an associate degree. Let's look at white folks at 113,000. 11.4% of them have no high school diploma. 32.3% of them have a high school GED. 31% of them, 31.8% of them have some college or an associate degree. 34% of us to their 31.8%. We got more college than all the groups. And you saw our median wealth. I'll go back to it. Around 5,000. Compared to Hispanic 6,000. Compared to white folks, 113,000. .9% of us have college degrees. To white folks, 16.4%. 5% of us have graduate professional degrees compared to 8%. Look at Hispanics numbers. 28% of them compared to 34% of us have high school degrees, diplomas. 19.4% have some college or an associate degree to 34% of ADOCs. 7% of them have a bachelor's degree compared to 11.9% of ADOCs. 2.7% of them have a grad degree compared to 5% of ADOCs. And we're in a race for the bottom with Hispanics who are leading. And Biden shows up with this bullshit. And y'all want me to be happy that he speaks flowery words while running from reparations. While running from ending qualified immunity. I just showed you the education. We have $56.77 median net worth. To Hispanics, $6,325. To white folks, $113,149. That bears repeating. White households possess 18 times more wealth than Hispanic households and 20 times more wealth than African American households. And we're far more educated than Hispanics. This is what the Tulsa race massacre has left behind in 2009. I don't have the numbers for 2021 since the pandemic. But I'm supposed to believe they're concerned about Black life because they're insisting on free COVID shots, free vaccines. That's the Jedi mind trick. They're giving away Krispy Kremes and reducing prison sentences and giving away marijuana. So they'll give us a weed habit. They'll give us diabetes, but are no to reparations. They'll reduce your prison sentence. Governor Newsom is giving out $161 million. That's another show. It's coming on Thursday. I mean, the puckery just won't stop. But I'm ungrateful because I'm not pleased that Biden even showed up and spoke those pretty words to the people. I'm the one with the problem. I'm the angry Black woman. You can sit up here and admit that these white supremacist, white inferior glacier donkey race soldiers are the biggest threat to homeland security. Yet you won't label them a domestic terrorist. I'm labeled a Black identity extremist. I'm disabled. I'm going to come over here and play with y'all in a second. I got to talk about this because I'm sick of folks trying to make out like the Democrats are reformed KKK. Want to call me crazy for wanting to weaponize the vote. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Thank you for your support. The way to give is in the banner flying below. I forgot to turn it on in my tirade, which I'm not allowed to be. Stop playing the victim, I'm told. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You're educated. What's wrong with you? You're a homeowner. You're an elitist. Why are you speaking up for the people who have not? Because none of us have wealth. I don't care if you have an income. If you got nothing to leave your children after your ancestors gave their lives to this country unwillingly through the worst heinous chattel slave labor of its kind, I don't understand why you ain't screaming like me. I don't understand why you ain't in this fight. Mr. Biden, first tour at the Greenwood Cultural Center with Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Marsha Fudge. Domestic Policy Advisor Susan Rice and Senior Advisor Cedric Richmond before delivering remarks remembering the death and destruction that began on May 13, 1921. I guess so it could be fresh in his speech. The president also met with the survivors of the massacre, who are all in their early 100s, will probably not see proper reparations. The 3 last known survivors testified last month before a House subcommittee about the riot and are urging Congress to consider reparations to be paid to the Greenwood community. During his remarks, Mr. Biden announced new initiatives to target the racial wealth gap, including by expanding access to home ownership and small business ownership for disadvantaged communities. What difference does that make when you've got a conservative court that just overturned Biden's decision to single out Black and minority business owners for more COVID relief, after the white folks have seen a ton of COVID relief under Trump? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Since it's on my mind. Hold on, family. Biden's overtly anti-white COVID rescue plan won't survive in court. Team Biden is poised to hand out billions of dollars to what it misleadingly labels socially disadvantaged farmers, restaurateurs, and other business owners hurt by the lockdowns. I've already done a show about this. You've got to check out the archive where he's talking about $8 billion set aside. Okay? For us and everybody else. It's a class-based $8 billion, while these white farmers received like $30 billion or something under Trump. Biden's trying to set aside a fraction of that to make Black farmers and other farmers of color and other socially disadvantaged farmers whole. Team Biden is poised to hand out billions of dollars to what it misleadingly labels socially disadvantaged farmers, restaurateurs, and other business owners hurt by the lockdowns. The money will start flowing to them in early June, provided they don't have white skin. Biden's American Rescue Plan defines socially disadvantaged based on skin color and ancestry, not the hardships faced by an individual. They got all the money already. Under Trump. Let's talk about it since we're here. In case you didn't see the Trump gives money to white farmers. Trump funnels record subsidies to farmers ahead of the election day. Despite an extraordinary government bailout, America's agriculture sector remains under severe economic pressure. How much did he give them? Federal payments to farmers are projected to hit a record $46 billion with a B. Black farmers didn't get none of that. Or if they did, it was a small, tiny percentage. But Biden sets aside $8 billion, and these white folks have stopped it in the Supreme Court. Let me find it. Hold on, y'all. Just give me a second. I thought I had it open. Oh, Lord, where is the article? Good Lord, have mercy. Just give me a second, family. We got to talk about it. We've got to talk about it. Here it is. Found it. Federal court. Biden's rescue plan is racist against whites and therefore unconstitutional. This was 14 hours ago. The Free Press. President Joe Biden recently taunted Republicans who had rejected his $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act by pointing out how they were showcasing its benefits for the folks back home. Quote, I'm not going to embarrass any one of them, but I have here a list of how back in their districts they're bragging about the rescue plan, close quote. Biden said during a visit to Ohio last week, in which he claimed to have a roster of 13 GOP hypocritical lawmakers, according to Politico, quote, I mean, some people have no shame, but I'm happy they know it. I'm happy they know that it benefited their constituents, he said as the crowd laughed. Republicans in retort may want to start showing constituents a federal court ruling that struck down part of Biden's plan for being unconstitutional and racist. The Free Press reported in early May that the U.S. Small Business Administration had released criteria for business owners seeking COVID relief through the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, which was part of the American Rescue Plan. Quote, me speaking. But did you hear this kind of pushback when he gave $80.5 million to the AAPI for their COVID relief, right? For their domestic violence, for their anti-Asian racist sentiment. No, they voted 94-1. So their protections could be made law. This is about what Tulsa was about. Ensuring and guaranteeing we never get a leg up in this country, that we're never made American, that we remain the anchor of this country's capitalism. The Free Press reported in early May that the U.S. Small Business Administration had released criteria for business owners seeking COVID relief through the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, which was part of the American Rescue Plan. The Small Business Association noted that the $29 billion fund was created to provide funding to help restaurants and other eligible businesses keep their doors open. The agency created a process that prioritized funding for any small business that is at least 51% owned by one or more individuals, who are women, followed by veterans, and then the socially and economically disadvantaged. Why is that, family? Because 95% of our business is self-employment, because our affirmative action gives gainful employment to white women as minority, immigrants as minority, and LGBTQIA over ADOS. So we've got to start our own businesses just to keep a roof over our heads or perish. The SBA defines socially disadvantaged as those who have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of their identity as a member of a group without regard to their individual qualities. In its actual program application, that category was further defined as people who are presumed to be socially disadvantaged. Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, including Alaska Natives and Native Hawaiians, Asia Pacific Americans, or subcontinent Asian Americans. So AAPI gets $80.5 million plus a piece of this, what did I say it was? $29 billion. These immigrants can double dip, and they do. The economically disadvantaged were more or less the same groups. How so? When the median national income for Asians is $87,000 to ADOC's $41,000 a year ago. How are these other groups economically disadvantaged when we're the anchor? In last place in every metric. How so? They don't expect you to know the data. In short, white men who were not veterans were shoved to the back of the line. Because I just shared with you, Trump gave them $46 billion that we were left out of, predominantly by and large. And now, as always, these Democrats want to take what should be exclusively our reparation and repair every damn body. So they too double dip. They weaponize immigration against us to neutralize us economically, neutralize us in the vote, while at the same time being able to anchor us to the bottom of capitalism. So they can get a better, bigger rate of return on their investment while they seek to ethnically cleanse us about this piece. They win. All they do is win, 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 no matter what. And want to go to Tulsa and speak flowery words after going through the museum. On Thursday, however, a federal appellate court said the Biden administration's rules amounted to systemic racism against white folks. Oh, fix it, Black Jesus. Lord have mercy. But I'm a Black identity extremist for pointing these things out. Okay. In a 2-to-1 opinion written by Judge Amul Thapar, me speaking, this is what happened to Prop 209. Ward Connolly argued these same ridiculous issues with us receiving affirmative action here in California. And now the Asians and Hispanics and white folks ride that narrative till it don't get up no more, while putting in place that you have to be bilingual to get a job interview. And when you show up speaking it as fluently as Pedro, you don't have the complexion for the protection for hire. Same thing. Wash, rinse, repeat. To ethnically cleanse ADOCs about this piece, at the very least, make us fourth-class citizens in the country our ancestors built with their lives, and make us eat the cost of slavery. But they sure sound pretty, like Obama. He sure sound pretty. He could sure croon to some Al Green. He could sure sing pretty after the Dylan Roof, the race soldier, executed the North Carolina 9 in church. He could sure sing Amazing Grace. This case is about whether the government can allocate limited coronavirus relief funds based on the race and sex of the applicants. A pandemic that was created in the lab with US dollars. We're going to talk about it. It's coming. That's why I call it a pandemic. You can't convince me you're more concerned about me not dying from COVID than you are us not dying from state-sanctioned executions, black-on-black crimes, and murder due to a lack of resources in the communities while you gentrify us out. And this egregious racial wealth gap. But you care so much that I go and take your free vaccine. You give me Krispy Kreme, you'll give me weed, you'll reduce my sentence. You'll give me money and gift cards and lottery tickets and shit. You're so concerned about my people's survival. We hold that it cannot. Thus, we enjoin the government from using these unconstitutional criteria. Unconstitutional because the SBA has injected explicit racial and ethnic preferences into their priority process. Restaurant owner Antonio Vitolo had sued, noting that he was shut out of the program, even though his wife is Hispanic, because they each own 50% of the business. The court pointed out that Vitolo filed his application on May 3rd, yet those who meet the SBA's priority criteria could still file 3 weeks after he did, and likely be approved and funded. By the time the SBA got to Vitolo, the well could be dry. There's an obvious solution to this, of course, Judge Thapar wrote. The agency can simply fund grants in the order they were received, without regard to priority status and without regard to the processing head start that many applications receive on the basis of race and sex. The judge also pointed out how the Biden administration's race baiting was an epic fail. Quote, the government offers little evidence of past intentional discrimination against the many groups to whom it grants preferences, Thapar wrote. Isn't this a problem? With Sheila Jackson Lee in the HR 40, every time they have a hearing, they got no data to support why this government owes us reparations to the tune of $151 million per ADOX. I'm the only one that knows how to Google, obviously. Indeed, the schedule of racial preference detailed in the government's regulation, preferences for Pakistanis, but not Afghans, Japanese, but not Iraqis, Hispanics, but not Middle Easterners, is not supported by any record evidence at all, because the injury is ours and ours alone. That made even less sense in this particular case, the majority said. Indeed, the restaurant at issue, Jake's Bar, is 50% owned by a Hispanic female. It is far from obvious why that 1% difference in ownership is relevant, Judge Thapar added. In closing, Thapar pointed out that the U.S. Supreme Court in 2 cases going back 2 decades has struck down race-based preferences. When it comes to us only, they do specifics for all the other groups, because all the other groups have caucuses that caucus on behalf of them specifically, while the CBC caucuses for every life to matter. As today's case shows once again, the way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race, he wrote. Fix it, Black Jesus. The majority ordered the SBA to fund Vitolo's application before any that came after it, although the court said veterans still may be considered for a priority preference. But they'll find a way to exclude Black vets. This may not be the last assault on Biden's racist anti-white tendencies. As the Free Press recently reported, A group of white farmers from Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, and Ohio have sued the Department of Agriculture because Biden's massive stimulus plan set up $4 billion to forgive loans for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, defined as those who are Black, American Indian, Hispanic, Alaskan Native, Asian American, or Pacific Islanders. Let me come over here and see what y'all got to say about it. Oh, Lord, let me pray us out. I need a drink. H. Bledsoe, welcome to the live. I heard they were in Tulsa dancing on the mass grave. Right, family? Kelly says Biden's disrespect towards our people is beyond criminal at this point. Brian says on K-Part, no one would sensibly be interested in an apology if it's not coming with redress. It would be synonymous to an abusive husband saying sorry, yet continuing the abuse of his spouse. Corey Lorenz, talk about it, sis. Welcome to the live. Brian says, notice how we were headed for a dark winter as far as COVID, and equally endangered by white supremacy prior to the elections. Now both seem to have conveniently dissipated following Biden's victory. You better know it, the one that 87% of our electorate showed up to give him. White supremacists love using the judge by the content of character, not color argument when it benefits them, it seems. You better know it. Unapologetically Black ADOS. Stop by to show love, sisters. Thank you so much for being on the live. Brian says cancer and AIDS medications, both exorbitant in pricing, are not affordable for many of those that depend on them. However, COVID is free. Sounds suspect to me. With that said, family, I'm going to go de-stress. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOX and its allies are, God truly is. Because, family, you are the face of God, the voice of God, the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. Until tomorrow for your midday wake-up call, you make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your evening. Know that I love you Black. I love you strong. Peace.